Hey, welcome to this episode of the songwritingcircle.com podcast. Today we're going to talk about songwriters and I'm going to make the cardinal mistake of talking about ranking them. Who's your favorite kind of conversation? I got me a mandola, got a cup of coffee over here. A friend of mine said, "You're gonna do what?" When I told him about this idea for a podcast episode, and I said, "Yeah, let's talk about the Mount Rushmore. We do this all the time as friends. Who's on your Mount Rushmore of musicians?" And he said, "So you're spoiling for a fight?" And I thought that was funny, and so I said, "Well, not quite, but here we are, just the same." So feel free to disagree. Feel free to post your personal top four. That's another thing that was funny to me. I sent a text a while ago to some of my friends saying, "Hey, these guys are on my Mount Rushmore. What about you?" And this guy responded with 5 people, and I was like, "You need to go back and look at the Mount Rushmore. It's only 4 heads on there." So it's a crazy, futile exercise to try and pretend that we know who's the best, especially something like art. But I think it also gives us a great opportunity to talk about musicians, about the art form, about songwriting, and about songwriters. And maybe as we do so and exchange these opinions, which that's all they are, they're just opinions, they're personal opinions. We're not trying to be definitive here. Then maybe we get to discover some songwriters that we're not that familiar with and never thought about in that light. So it's in that spirit that I thought we'd have this little conversation today, and I really would appreciate it if you would respond in the comments with who you like, who you dislike, preferably who you like, as a matter of fact. That's more positive than who you dislike. But so let's take this for a ride and see where it goes. The first thing I suppose is, well, this is a songwriter podcast, right? Songwriter centric, songwriting centric. So from the start, there's going to be people that say, well, that genre is not represented in your top four or top five, and I'm going to say you are so correct, because it is my top four, not somebody else's. And so there are some art forms that are great and they're totally valid and they're fantastic. But I'll tell you who doesn't know squat about Norwegian death metal. This guy. I know it comes to you as a surprise, but true nonetheless. So I'm sure there are legends of Norwegian death metal songwriters out there, and I have no idea who they may or may not be. And so, which says more about me than it does about the art form. I'm not denigrating it in any shape. I'm just saying I'm just not familiar with that. Some people might say, "Hey, you know what? Tupac Shakur should be in the top four." And some people will say, "Is rap really songwriting?" I personally subscribe to the opinion that yes, it certainly is. And actually, I love Tupac. But I know some people would say, "No way." I mean, we all remember Greg Allman, the late great Greg Allman, who said rap is short for crap. Um, that was one of the times when I personally disagreed with Greg Allman. The other one was when he married Cher, but that's neither here nor there. So you're going to find a lot of room for conversation here, and a lot of room for disagreement potentially. And I hope that we look at it as a lot of room for learning and for talking about these things that are dear to our hearts. And I was in actually in a songwriter circle yesterday. How amusing is that? All day, 2 p.m. until 9 p.m. And we all played songs and shared them, and some were covers, some were originals, a lot were originals. And it was really cool to be, and I encourage that you would find yourself in similar situations if you can do so. It was really neat to walk away from that experience thinking a couple of different things. One was, the last time I was that naked in front of people, it was in a dream that I was back in high school and I had to talk in public. It is a very vulnerable position to be in, to be playing a song of yours that you've never played before, and that's very revelating of where you are in your life at that moment. And you share this song, and you're two lines in, and you tell yourself, "I just made a big mistake. I should not be singing that song right now." But now you're doing it, and you have an audience of peers, and so you go with it. And And let me share this anecdote with you because to me, that's why we're here. So I'm singing this song, and I'm on the verge of just taking my guitar, putting it back in its case, and walking away. That's how insecure and how could I say, uncomfortable I was in that moment sharing that song. I felt like I was allowing people to look straight into my soul in ways that was just way too naked and vulnerable, as I said. So anyway, my audience, I'm sure, felt that, and this lady was sitting to my left, and she is a wonderful singer and songwriter in her own right. Somebody I really look up to, and like honestly so. Like I'm really impressed with her as a person and her as a songwriter. And so anyway, she felt that I was not doing well in that moment, and I had an iPad in front of me with the lyrics to the song because it's a new song and I haven't memorized it yet. And she started singing along with me in a show of solidarity and saying, you know what, we got your back. Let's do this song together. And so she'd never heard it before. She just listened to the first verse and got the melody and then joined in and supported me through that. And I thought that was a beautiful display. So if you have the opportunity to be with other songwriters, then by all means, please do. And if you don't, then I'm hoping that to some degree, this kind of podcast may help you feel a part of this community. But definitely reach out and try and talk to others. So anyway, my personal, if you know anything about me, the kind of songs that I like are in the Americana genre, mostly. I like songs that tell a story. I like songs with plots and character development. I like songs that are well crafted on the lyrics side of things. And hopefully the music part is also interesting to listen to. So on my personal Mount Rushmore of songwriters, number one is Mr. John Prine. I am forever amazed at the songs that gentleman puts forth, and continues to do so. I might add, he released an album not that long ago. He owns a record label, so that helps in a lot of ways. And one of these days we'll talk about the business side of songwriting. It will be an interesting episode to share. But John Prine, man, what can you say? My favorite thing about John Prine is that it's reasonably easy to write a song that is funny. It is reasonably easy to write a song where there are moments that are really vulnerable being shared. What is masterful in my mind is writing a song where you have both at the same time. And it's seamlessly blending from one emotion to the next and right back to the first. That's remarkable. He has a song where he's saying silly things and then in the middle of that song there is this line where it says, "Naked as the eyes of a clown." Whew. There's a lot of depth. There's a lot of backstory there, you know, because the clown is wearing all this outfit and this costume and this makeup, and everything is exaggerated. The smile on his face is painted on, literally. And but what can't lie is the eyes. Naked as the eyes of a clown. What a superb line. Superb line. So John Prine is definitely my personal favorite. You may not be familiar with his work, or you may be familiar with his work and not realize he wrote that song. Angel from Montgomery is a great example, covered by Bonnie Raitt. She had a huge hit with it, and she obviously did not write it. John Prine did. And I love that because that song was early on for me as a budding songwriter was great inspiration and also a great license to break up the mold and just write. And here's why. He wrote the song from the perspective of being a middle-aged woman. And you'll see a lot of people that will say, well, I can't sing this song in public by somebody else because it's a song supposed to be sung by a woman. Who cares? And so they'll start changing the gender of the pronouns. And that was before the whole pronouns and genders things evolved into what it is today. But people would feel really uncomfortable doing so. Just the other day, I sang live at a public venue, and this lady asked me if I knew "Girl Crush," which is obviously a song written for a woman to sing, a woman saying she has a girl crush, and then you realize that what she's really saying is she wishes she were this other woman who is now her love's companion, and so she has a girl crush on that woman is really what she's saying because she wishes she could be her. Um, so for a man to sing that song is kind of funny. And you know what? I don't give two hoots. I'll sing that song all day long. And I feel in a lot of ways that I probably would have felt that way anyway, but John Prine with that song with Angel from Montgomery really gave me license to do that. And anybody disagrees, I'm going to be saying, you know, I know you're cool right now, and I know you think you're being cool, but you'll never be as cool as John Prine singing and writing Angel from Montgomery. Problem solved for me. So John Prine is a master, and he is my number one. He's 1A. 1B is Guy Clark. And quite frankly, I very much could have flipped those two and have Guy Clark number one, John Prine number two. The only reason why I do not is again 100% subjective and personal, and that's because I chronologically came across John Prine first and was a huge fan of his for a very long time, um, and then discovered Guy Clark. So had that order been reversed, maybe my order would be reversed as well. The late Guy Clark, what can I say? Just a stunning individual. If anybody embodies the tradition of Texas songwriters better than that man, I don't know who that is. Um, Again, if you're not familiar with his material, please go listen. Fantastic, fantastic stuff. I am also very fond of his impact on the songwriting scene in that he was really a champion of songwriters, and you know, had several live with him at his house, most notably Townes Van Zandt, um, and just just a master of the craft. I remember this story he told of sitting, I believe it was in an airport, with another songwriter, and they're waiting. They're probably at the bar, and they're all waiting for their flight, and this other gentleman is there whom they don't know prior to this particular occurrence, and they're all there waiting for their flight, and this gentleman starts talking about his grandfather who emigrated from Europe and went through Ellis Island, and what this gentleman learned about life from his grandfather's experience as an immigrant. And Guy Clark and the other songwriter, whose name I can't recall, I feel really badly about that, maybe Robert Earl Keane, but I'm not sure it was. Either way, they both can't wait for this guy to get his plane so that they can grab a couple of napkins and write down that story, because they know there's a song in there. And if you've been around songwriters for more than 10 minutes, you heard that expression, dude, there's a song in that. And again, just yesterday as I was hanging out, this is good coffee, by the way. I wish I could share it with you. Well, not that very cup, that one's mine, but I would gladly pour you another cup. Just yesterday I was hanging out with these songwriters, as I was saying, and the host, who writes beautiful songs in his own right. And I would love to have him on his podcast interviewed one of these days. He would be very interesting to have. His approach is very unique and its intensity and purpose. And I would love to have him put that into words for you far better than I can put it forth. But he said to me several times as we were talking, he goes, "Did you write that song?" And it always amuses me when he says that, because I never, you know, he just hears a line or an expression or a set of circumstances, and automatically his first question, his first reaction is to say, "Did you write that song?" I like that. As a matter of fact, during our conversation yesterday, we ended up, somebody said, "Listen, we have a lot of people saying a lot of really funny things. Let's take a notebook and write them down. And then if we feel like it, we'll go back later and potentially write a song together or whatever." And we never did, but we still have the record of those conversations on paper, and we reserve the right, I'm sure, to go back and maybe individually or small groups look into, hey, let's do something with this. So that was kind of fun. But anyway, Guy Clark, to go back to him, just wrote fantastic songs, and in that Texas songwriter kind of way. and songs that were very, sometimes the topics were everyday topics. I remember he wrote a song about a train, which obviously there is a huge school of songwriters who wrote about trains. Train songs are a big deal. He wrote about a train going through Texas, and it was very one line really where he's from, was from. He was from a small place, and I loved it. I loved how he depicted the life of that small place by simply writing this song, specifically in one line where he said, all these people gather to see this train go by. None of them are taking the train. The train is not even scheduled to stop in that town, but it's a big deal. It's a new kind of train, and they're all there to witness that. That's a big happening in that town. And in that simple description, he's telling you a lot of backstory, once again, about life in that particular town without having to say a word other than a train is driving by, and we're all going to go there, and none of us are taking that train, but we're all there to witness it anyway. I find that fascinating. Jason Isbell talks a lot about trimming the fat off of his lyrics, and using his wife, the wonderful Amanda Shires, great songwriter in her own right, to do editing for him, and says, all right, these are the lyrics, and she'll come back and she'll say, okay, third verse, second line, to hell, you can do better than this. And he'll go back and try and trim the fat down to the point of, if he were to take one more word out, then he would start to lose meaning, and not be able to as eloquently and accurately portray what he's trying to portray. There's a great lesson there as a songwriter in terms of editing. And I personally suck at editing something remarkably fierce. I do not edit just about ever. It's a terrible habit to have. I always come at it from the perspective of where I wrote that word because I meant it when I wrote it. That's the one I wanted to use. That's why it's there. I don't feel the need to take it out. I'm not advocating writing like that. It's a terrible habit that I have, and I always think that I'm gonna one day learn how to edit, and so far I never have. Whatever. If you've ever listened to a song of mine, that's how it came out. That was first outburst, as it were. That's what you're hearing now. There's never been any editing. I don't know how to do that. So it's an unfortunate state of affairs, but one day I will learn. One day I'll grow up, and or maybe I won't. We'll find out. One thing that was always amusing about Guy Clark as well is in the latter part of his life, he would co-write a lot, and so he would invite people that either he was told were interesting or that he found interesting, younger people, and he would say, all right, what you got? And they would write a song, or they would sing a song that they wrote, and you'd like, so what else you got? And I cannot imagine being on the other side of that remark. I would be already, obviously, trembling in my boots to be talking to Guy Clark in the first place. Not that he would ever think that I was worth inviting, don't get me wrong. But in that parallel world where maybe I could be good enough to deserve that invitation, or bordering on being somewhat in the vicinity of maybe one day potentially, eventually good enough. To play my song to him would already be just, oh my word, it would take years of my life. But to then, and it would be elating, of course, as well, but it would be the scariest thing I've ever done, I'm sure. And to then hear him totally deadpan go, all right, what else you got? Like, oh, dude, it's like being in a fight. You slug the dude with all you got, and he looks at you and he goes, well, that was cute. This is not going to end well for you. And so he used to do that, and then he would write. There's a great album produced by Vince Gill, put out by Ashley Monroe, and I think it's called Like a Rose, if memory serve. And she describes that she was she went to Guy Clark's house and played a few songs, and he said, so what else you got? And she was like, well, I really don't. That was it, And he goes, well, talk to me about you. And so she gives him the rundown of her life, and he goes, great, we're going to write about that. And the eponymous track to that CD, Like a Rose, is that song, and it's a beautiful song. So Guy Clark was a champion of songwriters in many ways, was a fantastic songwriter in his own right, great storyteller, and he is definitely my 1B, 1A alternate, any way you want to put it. I cover a lot of his songs live, and I have this deal with myself that if I play a gig live in a cover band situation, I will do 9 songs for the audience and 1 song for myself. And the 1 song for myself very often is a Guy Clark song. And I'm never as happy as when I hear somebody in the audience when I say, hey, I take requests. And somebody will say, hey, do you know a Guy Clark song? Whoo! It's going to be a good evening now. All right, my third head on the Mount Rushmore is Chris Christopherson. What can you say about that gentleman that hasn't been said already? I don't know. From writing an album for Johnny Cash, to being a Rhodes Scholar, to being a movie star, to writing remarkable songs. I think we've all uttered that line at one point or another. But I've said that about him so many times that he probably discarded and forgot lines that I would kill to write as a lyricist. Just, I mean, stunning songs. And maybe not the most gifted of singers, I think it's fair to say, without being a jerk. There is this, when he was in a band with Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, and Waylon Jennings and the Highwaymen, there was a documentary done, and I think it's on, or used to be on YouTube anyway. You know, check it out if you have a chance. And he came in the morning and says to Willie, he goes, you know, I think I blew out my voice last night. And Willie retorts, well, how would you know? Good old Willie Nelson. And so anyway, Chris Christopherson, you know, songwriter to the stars, and great songs for himself too. He wrote The Pilgrim, and that to me is the second best country western song of all times. Fantastic song. Just cuts to the core and paints such an eloquent picture. Just a brilliant song. As a matter of fact, a couple of days ago I was doing a live gig and a solo acoustic gig. So of course I brought an electric guitar instead, because you know, one has to be rock and roll. But anyway, I asked the audience, do you have a request? And this guy said, could you do The Pilgrim? And I was pumped. So I did. Second best country and western song of all times, by far. Just an amazing song. And I remember before I was a guitar player and before I was a songwriter, back when I played horns and a little bit of piano, I remember seeing him on some variety show. I couldn't even tell you what it is now, what show it was. But I was a young lad anyway, and he was playing a Gibson J45 and Sunburst. And I wasn't a guitar player. I did not aspire to be a guitar player in those days, but there was something about the slope shoulder design in that Gibson J45 and the image that he struck, his aura, that in my mind linked that guitar to being a songwriter. And so when I got enough money, I bought myself a J45. And I wrote a few songs on it, none of which, needless to say, get anywhere near the level of sheer beauty that he's able to coax out of that guitar when he writes. But to this day, I still have that J45, and I might just be in love with it. But I know that part of that love comes from that deep memory of, that's what a songwriter looks like. That's what that's the man right there. And Chris Christopherson, man, what can you say? I remember this, there's a video on YouTube, actually, of Jason Isbell performing The Pilgrim. And you know Jason Isbell's been around the block a time or 10, but he has to perform the song as a tribute to Chris Christopherson. And I don't think that he knew that Chris Christopherson was going to be there when he performed the song right in front of him. And you can tell he's a little rattled by that, because he actually talks about it before he starts doing the song. And obviously he's Jason Isbell, so he hits it out of the park, as you would imagine. But man, that moment when you have to play The Pilgrim of all songs in front of freaking Chris Christopherson, woo, That's got to be some. And as a performer, I suppose that's where you dig deep into the song to find whatever confidence you may not feel in the moment. I know I would have none. Let's be honest. I do 300 gigs a year. I couldn't tell you the last time I was scared to play a song, in a gig format. I think I would be there for sure. Oh my word. So many songs, and so many songs people don't necessarily know he wrote either. From the Johnny Cash tunes that we mentioned, a whole album's worth, to Busted Flat in Baton Rouge. Uh, great songs. Great songs over the years. And to me, there is also another video that is well worth watching on YouTube of he singing with Rita Coolidge. There's an intensity. First of all, the song is fantastic. Um, you know, but it's a duet, obviously, and you wonder. I mean, the way they look at each other, you can obviously tell that they're involved, but you wonder if they're going to be able to finish the song, or if they're going to have to just tear each other's clothes off and go to town on each other before the end of the song. There is such an amazing chemistry between them. It's one of the best duet performances I've ever seen in my life. I mean, you can't help but be drawn, and then the song is so perfect. I don't care if it's right or wrong. It's part of the lyrics. Um, Let the devil get, tomorrow. For tonight I need a friend. Just incredible lyrics. So he is definitely, in my mind, third. And this is where I'm going to be a punk. I can't tell you who's number 4 on my Mount Rushmore. I can tell you who's number 4 today, but probably in 10 minutes I'm going to have another songwriter I want to prop in that position. Just too many to choose from, too many that you want to take your hat off to and say, yeah, you're the man. I mean, Townes Van Zandt that I mentioned earlier on, how do you not have him in there? Steve Earle, Bob Dylan, list goes on and on. Actually, amusingly enough, Steve Earle was quoted as saying about Townes Van Zandt that Townes was the best songwriter of all time, that he was willing to stand naked in his cowboy boots on top of Bob Dylan's coffee table and say that, which is a mental picture nobody needed, but here we are just the same. But yeah, the list goes on and on of people. John Lennon, I suppose, would be in there. Some people would be Kurt Cobain would be in there. Clearly, I do not personally think that he belongs in that top 4, and it's really nothing against Kurt Cobain. It's just not, if you look at the top 3 I already alluded to, clearly that's not my bailiwick, and I may well be wrong. Somebody like David Bowie, I could see in there. There's just so many people that are clearly remarkable songwriters. If I had to choose one, put a gun to my head kind of thing, and I really would not appreciate if you would do such a thing. But if I had to come up with a 4th, good grief, even now I'm still stalling for an answer. Maybe Hank Sr.? I don't know. Bruce Springsteen? Especially Bruce Springsteen acoustic. That would be, I still think The Ghost of Tom Joad is one of the best albums of all time. Joni Mitchell? Oh, it's so rough, isn't it? So difficult to get there, to find a definitive top 4 that you can live with today and tomorrow. I'm gonna go against my inclination. I'm gonna say Jason Isbell, even though he is so young still, technically, and has so much more to offer that we haven't heard yet. I'm gonna go with Jason Isbell because I am flabbergasted by that gentleman's ability to write and craft a song, and so I'm gonna go Jason Isbell. But ask me tomorrow, and I might change my mind again. Anyway, I would love to have that conversation with so many of you in person and listen to what you have to say and figure out what makes you tick as a songwriter and what you really prize above anything else. So please don't hesitate to post a comment and tell me who you think would belong in there, and why. I would be fascinated to hear your response. So please do not hesitate to share that. In the meantime, please feel free to visit songwritingcircle.com. There's a lot of information there. There's a lot of interviews with songwriters and a lot of prompts for you to start writing or start again writing or I would really my main mission, my main interest here, other than connecting with you on a personal level, is really to inspire you to write more and write again and write more often. There's a lot of ugliness in this world. We all know it, and it is what it is. We need more art. We need you to help us with more beauty and more art. So please go right at it and have a good time and share your art. Share the beauty that you come with, and I think we'll all be better off for it. So thank you so much for watching so far, and have yourself a great day.